Welcome back, everybody. Angel Arts here, and this is going to be another bonus episode for The Wolf Among Us, this one for episode 2. And in this episode, I'm going to go over some of the extras. I'm going to be going over the results of my decisions, because in the last, I guess I played episode 2 so early that the results based on what other people chose compared to my decisions weren't posted yet. So I'm going to go over those. And then I'm going to, I guess, talk a little bit about some of my additional thoughts on the game now that it's been about a week since I last finished playing episode 2. And I'll give some theories and predictions, I guess, moving forward. So let's go ahead and start by going with the player choices, because this is stuff that should have been in the last video, but it wasn't. So these are all episode 1 choices. We already know what I did there. How did you respond to Crane about Snow's death? You and 12.1% of players ignored him. Wow. So I guess a lot of people gave him a response, at least. I mean, I guess at the time, I felt like Bigby was still in his own little world. Like, he was still processing what was happening. I think he was still in shock with what was going on with Snow, which is why he got so frustrated at the police officers. So I thought ignoring Crane, it wasn't necessary. I mean, I admit there were 2 reasons. One, it was because I thought he was in shock, and 2, because he doesn't particularly care for Crane, so he's not going to say anything unless spoken to. And even then, if spoken to by Crane, he might not respond. Or at least respond in the way that Crane wants him to. But, so that was that choice. How did you treat the murder suspect? You and 63.9% of players persuaded him to talk. Yeah. That was a little confusing, because the game seemed to think at one part that I treated him mercifully, and another part treated him like abused him. Because Snow really thought I abused him. I punched him once, and then I was really nice to him afterwards. You know, I gave him the whiskey, I gave him the cigar. I didn't hit him again, except for that one time, just to give him, I guess, a warning that, you know, I mean business, stop joking. I mean, he gave that joke about, oh, you came here for answers, I thought you came here for questions, and I guess he just wanted to show Tweedledee from the beginning that he's not playing around. And after watching other people's Let's Play of this, I noticed that Toad also calls you on it if you abused the prisoner, and he yells at you for it. But it was like, Bluebeard thought I was going easy on him, Snow thought I was abusing him, and Toad thought I was going easy on him, or I was being humane to him because he didn't say anything to me about me abusing the prisoner. So, I mean, I guess you could say that each person has different varying opinions. So it's possible for different characters. Of course, it's possible for different characters. One to think I'm abusive, one to think I'm too easy, and one to think I was just right. To go with the whole Fables fairy tale, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, I guess, persona. I don't know. That kind of confuses me a little, but maybe I'll just think that it's just different characters have different varying opinions on what is and isn't acceptable in questioning someone during an interrogation. Did you let Snow come with you to the trip trap? You and 92.4% of players let her make her own decision. This feels a lot like one of the decisions that you make in The Walking Dead, which I'm not gonna get into details in case those of you out there haven't played The Walking Dead season 1. It feels very similar, and I think the results were pretty similar too on this one. How did you handle Georgie Porgy? You and 28.6% of players hit Georgie. I did hit him. On hindsight, I would have rather have had Bigby hit his stuff, not trash his place, but maybe hit one of his stuff, like probably his boombox. I don't know. Because I think that would have hurt Georgie Porgy, would have hurt him more if I destroyed his stuff versus hitting him. because he actually seemed to like and even expect me hitting him. And I think I would have had far more effect if I just destroyed 1 or 2 objects, if I really wanted to hit something. I don't know what the results would have been like if I had destroyed objects instead, but didn't hit Georgie. Would it have been a different percentage? Or would it have been a different stat? I don't know. Did you keep punching Beast when he was down? You and 67.6% of players opted not to hit Beast a second time. Yeah. So, I wanted to give a little bit of a response to, or an addendum to my thoughts on the whole Beast and Big B fight. So I said that bothered me a lot, and I still stand by that. That fight itself, how that fight was designed, gameplay-wise, I was a bit disappointed in, and I was a bit upset about. Now hear me out, because yes, I completely agree. Big B should defend himself. You know, if his life is in danger, he should defend himself. Especially because it's a misunderstanding. I don't think, and because it's a misunderstanding, I don't think either of them should die by the other person's hands, because it wasn't Beast's fault, it wasn't Big B's fault. If anyone was to take the blame, it's Beauty. Beauty was the one who takes the blame. But what bothers me, though, is that the game should have given you an option of how to defend yourself. Like, if you wanted to gouge Beast's eyes out, then there should have been a target to his eyes and maybe a target somewhere else on his body, like his chest or his arm or his leg or something. So you could choose how to attack Beast in order to defend yourself against him. And because they did it with, I believe they did it with Grendel, or Gren, or whatever his name was, in the Trip Trap Bar. With the Woodsman, they did it a little differently based on choosing what objects you would throw him into. For example, you could choose to throw him into the shelf versus something a little less lethal like the couch. So, you know, it's the option. You had the choice of how much punishment you could dish out to the Woodsman. So, if it wasn't for that, I mean, if Telltale had already shown that in previous fights you were given the option on how to attack or how to fight with your assailant, and the fact that they didn't give you any option, they just give you one option in the fight of Beast, I thought was really disappointing. I consider myself a huge Telltale fanboy. I'd be the first to admit that I'm a bit fanboyish, but that does not mean that if I see something like that I wouldn't call them on it. And I totally will call Telltale and things like that. I think that that was a bit lazy of Telltale. So shame on you, Telltale. I think that you should have really given us the option of doing something that was a little less, different degrees of how to handle Beast. I mean, yeah, it would have been nice if there was also a more diplomatic, verbal way to stop the fight. I would have loved that too, but I can understand that maybe that wouldn't have been an option because Beast just was in such a rage that he wouldn't listen. I get it. So maybe the only way that you could really get him to stand down is to physically defend yourself from him. But they really should have given us the choice of how. So, let's go through the Book of Fables. Okay, so we've got some things here unlocked. I believe this is Florence, maybe. I don't know who this is, and I've got another locked one here. We've got a lot of characters here to read through. Alright. Let's start with Bluebeard. Bluebeard's Mercy. Bluebeard's last wife. After a long line of marriages resulting in mysterious disappearances, Bluebeard's last wife in the homelands was naturally suspicious of him. One day he departed on business, leaving her alone in his estate. He gave her free rein of all the rooms, but made her promise not to open the closet on the ground floor. She defied him, of course, and discovered the location of his missing wives. When Bluebeard returned, he knew he must kill her before she revealed his murderous secret. She persuaded him to allow her a moment to pray, which he eventually granted. This small mercy gave her brothers time to arrive and rescue her, and Bluebeard's crimes were exposed. Yeah, Bluebeard's not a good person. Yeah. Didn't say who his wife was. He's not a great guy. He's not an upstanding citizen in the Fables community at all. I'm surprised that he hasn't been thrown down the witching well yet. The 13th Floor. Oh, the 13th Floor. The Witches and Wizards of Fabletown. I love these characters. All the witches. The 13th floor of the Woodland Building is home to a group of witches and wizards tasked with the protection of Fabletown. They use their powers to keep the community hidden from prying Mundy eyes, but all magic has its limits, and every spell has its cost. If you ever read the comics, I find this group particularly fascinating and very interesting. They're neither good nor bad. They're pretty much a neutral faction, but they are pretty much... they're awesome. They're just really awesome. And you don't know whether or not you can trust them or not. You're not really sure where their alliances really lie, and that's what's really fascinating about the witches and wizards in the 13th floor. The Magic Mirror. The Magic Mirror speaks mostly in rhyme and demands that others do the same. He also requires the name of whatever object or person you wish to find. If you follow these rules, the mirror will show you a glimpse of whatever you want to see, but nothing more. Just a glimpse. Unless his lips are sealed. Which I still think is some sort of spell. The Witching Well. The Witching Well is located in a chamber inside the Woodland Building, where it is used to dispose of things meant never to be seen again, and that could include people who are sentenced down the Witching Well. Dead fables are committed to its depths, as are the most unredeemable criminals. No one is entirely sure what lies at the bottom of the well, nor indeed if it has a bottom at all, but it is widely assumed to be the passageway to the final resting place. I don't want to say too much because spoilers, but Witching Well comes up a lot in the book, in the novels. Jack Horner. Here we go. Jack is always up to something, but he's not nearly as smart as he thinks he is. His plans to get rich quick often backfire, but his confidence never wavers. He thinks he's the most important person in Fabletown, but everyone knows him as mostly a harmless, smart arse. Yeah. Jack is definitely my least favorite character in the Fables. He's just really slimy, and he's always wants to, you know, get rich quick scheme, and you can't trust the guy. He's good looking, I'll give him that. He'd be even more good looking if he cut his hair. I'm not very big on guys with long hair. But yeah, he's just not, he's so arrogant and so full of himself, and nothing good comes from Jack, really. Like, he's just a horrible, horrible character. I don't even love to hate him. That's how bad he is. At least with certain villains, there are plenty of villains in the universe of the Fables that I love to hate. I don't even love to hate him. That's how bad it is. He has an offshoot series, because you've got the Fables, graphic novels, but there's also another series that's all about Jack's adventures, I think, that came out of the Fables series. I don't read it because I'm not interested in Jack, really. Although sometimes certain things in the main plot of the Fables storyline does cross with Jack, so I guess that's a little interesting. I'm sure there are plenty of Jack fans out there, so I apologize if you absolutely love him and love his character, but I'm not a big fan. Lily, the estranged sister. Lily and her sister Holly grew up in the homelands together, but had a falling out shortly after moving to the mundane world. Aimless and increasingly destitute, Lily turned to prostitution, and now she's the second victim in an ongoing murder investigation. Poor thing. The Troll Cross. A troll cross is an amulet made of iron that was foolishly thought to protect the wearer from trolls. Lily acquired hers while wandering through the wilderness searching for something to eat. She came across a human, but before she could devour him, he held the troll cross out and shouted, "Back! Back, you troll!" After enjoying her tasty snack, Lily plucked the cross from the dead man's hands. After the exodus, she wore the troll cross constantly as a reminder of better days. That's interesting. It's really cool reading all of these like codex things, because you learn some really neat information, background information that probably has nothing to do with the story, but is neat to know about the universe. Georgie Porgy. I love how his tattoo is Kiss the Girl, because I think I don't know the Georgie Porgy nursery rhyme very well, but I think it has something to do with a girl kissing him or him kissing the girl. But also because one of his employees, or one of the people that works for him is the Little Mermaid, even though that this is a different Little Mermaid from the Disney version. The whole Kiss the Girl thing kind of, I don't know if Telltale did that on purpose, but it can't be a coincidence. Georgie runs the Pudding and Pie, a strip club that also caters to the unmentionable desires of Fabletown citizens. He has tried just about everything there is to try in pursuit of worldly pleasures, but none of it satisfies him for long. He does seem to enjoy pushing people's buttons. Oh yes, he does. He takes pride in his nightclub and doesn't react well to anyone meddling in his affairs. He has a neat hat, though. I like his hat. I'll at least give him props for that. Clever Hans. Whew! There's something about shy, blue-eyed blondes who are pretty fit. I mean, he might be a little too muscly for my taste. I don't want guys that are too huge, but his personality seems so sweet and so friendly that, you know, it works for him. You know, it works. Bouncer, janitor, handyman. I don't know where Clever Hans comes from, like what fable or nursery rhyme he's from, but he looks really good in a wife beater. I don't think that the codex is going to say that, though. Clever Hans always does exactly as he's told. Aw, poor guy. I hate that he's working for Georgie Porgy then. However, he often misunderstands his instructions and ends up hurting himself for behaving oddly. Aw. As in the case of his noted fable, where he threw sheep's eyes at his wife. Sheep's eyes at his wife? Unsurprisingly, she left him, and now Hans works as a bouncer at Georgie's club. He hopes to dance on stage one day. Oh! What episode is that gonna be? Oh, I'm so bad. This is the bonus episode, so I guess I can be a little less. Behave, Angel Arts. He hopes to dance on stage one day, but for now he's content sweeping up and making sure the crowd doesn't get out of hand. Fair enough. Cute belt buckle. It looks like his belt buckle looks like a Charizard. This guy's got brownie points. He's getting constant brownie points from me. Hopefully we'll see Hans again. I'd like to see him. Nerissa, the Little Mermaid. Nerissa's story never had a happy ending. Oh. She's known as the Little Mermaid, the young girl who gave up her tail for a pair of legs in the hopes of winning the heart of a handsome prince. When he married a princess instead, Nerissa was left heartbroken. Yeah, this is the actual, you know, the real Little Mermaid version, not the Disney version where everything was happily ever after and Prince Eric was probably a lot hotter than the prince in the actual Little Mermaid. She made the journey to the mundane world hoping for a better life. Now she dances at the Pudding and Pie, but each step she takes feels like walking on shards of glass. She has very little left, but finds some comfort in the company of her fellow dancers. Okay. So that's all of the extras that I have unlocked in the Book of Fables. Very interesting stuff. And achievements. What have I got? Oh, this achievement hasn't been opened yet. Write to an attorney. Complete Chapter 1, Episode 2. Breaking Point. Complete Chapter 2 of Episode 2. Sisters. Complete. Made them cry. Can I get a fresh set of towels? No respect for the dead. Okay. Apprentice Librarian. Unlock all books. Entries in Episode 2, which I haven't done yet. Alright, and then the rest is Episode 3. So I'm going to end with some thoughts on who I think, some of my thoughts on the episode so far. Now that it's been a week since I last played. I don't think that the Ichabod in the photo is the real Ichabod. I mean, it's getting to the point where I hope Telltale doesn't fall in this trap where they use the glamour gimmick. They're starting to use the glamour gimmick a little too much. I feel like that Ichabod is a fake Ichabod, somebody who's glamored to look like Ichabod to frame him. And if that's the case, then I'm a little disappointed, because that's twice that Telltale have used glamour to I guess, to explain a cliffhanger. Hopefully not, and they're gonna surprise me. Maybe it might be the real Ichabod, but something about the way that he behaved, and just the way that throughout this episode, just the way that Ichabod carried himself and the way he behaved, something's off. Something just doesn't seem right. So I think that Ichabod, who was watching the magic mirror, he destroyed the mirror, not because he was caught, but because he's upset that somebody was framing him. So I don't think he did it because he's guilty. He just did it because he realizes now that everybody's gunning for him, and they know that a lot of people hate him, including Bigby and Snow. So he's in a pickle right now. But I don't think it's Crane. He might have indirect involvement with it, which is what I'm going to get to next. If you remember from my last bonus episode after episode 1, I was talking about the red-headed guy, and you see the I gave like 3 different points where you see the red-headed guy. Thanks to some of my viewers, there are actually 2 other places in episode 1 where you do see the red-headed guy as well. Apparently you see him at the very beginning, I believe, walking out of Toad's apartment, just before Bigby is walking into Toad's apartment at the very beginning of episode 1. And then the other time that you see the red-headed guy is he actually is the driver of the cab, the taxi cab that Bigby and Snow White were riding in, which I think was really interesting, because that meant that he was the last person that you saw with Snow White before we saw her head chopped off. Well, now we know that wasn't actually Snow White's head. So I'm a little confused now, because that would have been, since the redheaded guy was with Snow White the whole time, or at least not the whole time, but the last that we saw her, signs point to that being a great opportunity, if he is the killer, to kill her there. But it didn't happen. I was trying to look out for signs of the redheaded guy during this episode, but I just didn't find him at all. And I was also looking for another character that might have appeared throughout this episode, but again, I didn't notice another character. The only reason I did that was because maybe whoever was the red-haired guy glamored himself to look like somebody else, just to keep people from tracking him. Who do I think the red-headed guy is? I might have already said this in the last bonus episode, so I apologize if I'm repeating things again. But I believe, my theory is that the red-headed guy is actually the Headless Horseman. And it kind of makes sense, because if you notice, when you read the Book of Fables, in-game, not from the Book of Fables that I just went through in this episode, but in-game, where they have all the pictures, the Headless Horseman appears in the book, and I think he's the only character that appears in the book that doesn't actually appear in the story. In the Wolf Among Us story, with the exception of the dwarves. The dwarves might come into play later. So, or maybe even the dwarves are working for the Headless Horseman, I don't know. But yeah, everybody else in the Book of Fables has appeared in this story at some point. And the Headless Horseman, I think, it makes sense because of the way that the victims have been dying, is he's been chopping heads off. So, that signs point to the Headless Horseman. And maybe he's glamored himself up to look like the red-headed guy. If you notice from the previews of the next episode, previews of episode 2 from the end of episode 1, there was that scene where Bigby was holding on. He's holding Ichabod Crane over the witching well, asking him, "What did you do?" So I'm thinking maybe Ichabod had made a deal with the Headless Horseman to allow the Headless Horseman to be in Fabletown, disguised. And maybe something within the deal got broken or whatever, and now the Headless Horseman is out and about killing people and leaving things on the doorstep of the Woodlands apartment to get at Ichabod, as a warning to Ichabod. I think the message, because I think Bigby says this, I think this is the message when they first find Faith's head. He says, I think this is a message, and I believe that message is for Ichabod Crane. I don't think that the Headless Horseman is necessarily trying to get at the Fables. I mean, he is by killing all these Fables, but ultimately I think he's trying to get at Crane for some sort of revenge or something. So, or maybe he's trying to get Crane out of office. I don't know. But those are my theories. We'll see if any of remnant of that is true at all. That's my other criticism about episode 2, is that the previews of the next episode at the end of episode 1 was a bit misleading, because I'd like to say that more than half, yeah, I would say way more than half of those scenes that you saw in the preview for episode 2 at the end of episode 1 didn't actually happen. And yes, that actually occurred a couple of times in The Walking Dead, but this one was pretty blatant. Like, there were a lot of scenes, several of them, that didn't happen in this episode. In fact, they even repeated another scene in the preview to episode 3 at the end of this episode, where, you know, Bigby has turned into the wolf and Toad is like, Bigby, is that you? You know, they repeated it. So I don't know if this episode was supposed to be longer. I did feel it was a bit short, because it took me about an hour and a half to go through all the content, which is about the same, that actually is the same length for the episode 1 of The Walking Dead Season 2. I don't mind if the games are shorter, if the episodes are shorter, that's okay. I just hope that they didn't intend on having more things happening in this episode based on the preview, and they just had to rush through it. I hope they're not rushing through it. I hope it's not because they're trying to squeeze in and spread out the resources, because I know they're doing the Game of Thrones game, and I know that they're doing the Borderlands game, so I'm hoping that these shorter episodes is not because of that, is not because they're spreading their resources, because that could be a huge, detriment to Telltale. I'm hoping Telltale is smarter than that. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's not the end of the world that there were a lot of things in the preview that didn't actually happen in this episode, but it makes me wonder if they had to change some things in the plot at the last minute, or if they had to move some scenes over to episode 3. I don't know. But anyway, so those are my thoughts. Thank you guys again for watching. And yeah, I look forward to playing episode 3 with you guys next, whenever that shows up. So thanks again, guys, for watching. And until next time, love yourselves and love each other.